Hello, you're listening to the Neil Lampton Show. My name is Joey, and I'm joined this week by what is known as the classic lineup. That is Neil.
Hello.
And by Paul.
The classic lineup surely includes Ed.
No.
Not for a long time.
Shouldn't you two now launch into a 30-minute tirade about Ed?
That bollockless noise.
I think people were missing that pod from 10 years ago.
How are you, Paul? Is this the first time you've been on this season?
No, I think I joined very early on, but we haven't won in 3 games, so obviously
we got the
call. Time to bring people back to normality.
You're very much Ben Sheaf coming off the bench while Dom's Jamie Allen is conspicuously absent. Right, okay. So moments of the week. Neil, you start us off.
Big crowd.
Yeah,
I like that. So it's a weird one. So it was apparently our biggest championship crowd since that really rubbish Leeds game where we brought 28,000 and let everybody down. But but I'm one of those people. I remember back when I first started my blog, well over 10 years ago, I was really angry about a lot of stuff. And one of the things I got really angry about was when people clapped the attendance when it was 23, because I in my mind was like, oh, we're a Prem club, we should have 30,000. Now I don't get angry about that at all. I'm kind of like, well, it's been so mad for the last 10 years. People are just, we've been in Birmingham, we've been in Sixfields. People don't really know what's going on. So the fact that we're gradually building up some sort of excitement around not just the people who used to always go, but the kids around here as well, makes me really happy. So yeah, I'm well pleased that, it was a really good attendance, and it caught me by surprise. I didn't expect it to be that. You just assume, as the season progresses, things will just kind of plateau, but that was an excellent number from everybody.
Yeah, I'm stuck in the middle of this because I obviously have the greater interests of the club at heart, first and foremost. So I looked around and thought, fantastic, this is money in the coffers, this is people in the city excited and engaged in a club that felt like it had been taken away from them 10 years ago, and blah, 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 blah. But I also looked around and thought, it is easier to get about when there's less people in it.
You hate FA Cup games, don't you? You're like, get out of it.
God, I like being able to go to the toilet easily. My legs are to one side, and the guy, my 3-year-old, was kicking a seat in front of him. I was like, this wouldn't normally be a problem. Yeah.
I know. I've not had the pie all season.
Paul, your moment of the week.
I unsurprisingly, or maybe surprisingly, I have loads of moments of the week. One of them, which I'll let you get onto, was obviously involving aforementioned 3-year-old child. I'm going to drag it down for a second though, and I think my moment of the week is they have the football fans in general have this why are we treated like second-class citizens? Why aren't we allowed to drink in the stands? Yeah, that's why you're not allowed to drink in the stands, people, because you already turned up bevied. And then you try and start a fight.
He's back,
and
baby. It's right. Let me go through my list of grievances to start the podcast off. No, you are right. You are right. It was was bad. Yeah.
Just go along. If you until it's not just football, is it? It's society. But until men of a certain age lose the I'm a man. Look at. There was a thing on YouTube, on Twitter earlier, look at us Swansea fans. We're taking over a fucking service station. It's like, oh, for fuck, this is just read a book, play the piano, just try and do something other than just be an utter twat. And it's like, as you said, we went with 3 children. The eldest is 9, and you're looking at it going, this isn't what I come to the football for, to watch you knobheads try and start a fight with each other. I thought we'd left all this behind, and here it is in 2021, and I'm still watching a bunch of utter idiots trying to show how manly they are, and it's just take your toxic masculinity and fuck off away from this game, because you're dragging it down. I'm sorry, you are. And until you England have got an issue because their next fixtures behind closed doors, it's until we as a group of people stop going on Twitter going, look at this man, he's a hero, look, he's going for a fight. It's no, he's not a hero, he's a twat. And everyone else who joined in, because that's not what this is about. This isn't about you having a fight in the stands. This is about us as a community supporting our team who's fourth in the table. And both sides let themselves down. But they let my daughter down, who doesn't need to be subjected to that. That's it, really. It just really wound me up at the time. Winds me up more now, because I want to be able to take my children to the football without having any of that shit. Like I can take them everywhere else.
You're totally right, though. I mean, the problem is there seems to be this thing where people can't make the distinction between being a really loud, vociferous, happy, supportive group of fans in that corner really gets behind them, and then just being the people that you've just described. Like, there is a difference. You can still have a great atmosphere and defend, your team's honour, whatever the hell that means, without doing what happened. And it's going to take a while, I think, before we get to a point where that element of what seems to be normal for a group of people just to go to the football to get angry at other people calms itself. I think we are better than we used to be, 20 to 30 years ago, obviously, but there's still an element of it which is just baffling.
The sort of slightly lighter side of all that is the kind of very easily identifiable come when it's a big game, high attendance people. And there was a couple that were sat right in front of us who were absolute prime candidates, one of which during the first half was stood up and largely singing like you only sing when you're winning and is this a library, like back at his own stand of fans. You kind of think you could go into the corner. Like you could go, like you're looking back at what is largely a stand populated by either children and families.
But you did, at some point, you felt like sitting him down, because he was one of those people who every decision the referee gave was clearly because he was anti-Cov. Like even he gave a free kick against us at one point, and everyone in the stand, apart from this one guy, was probably that, and you felt like walking up to going, mate, is everything all right at home?
Yeah, that's the thing that I keep thinking. Yeah.
Because you're getting really angry about that. It's just a free kick given against us for what was basically a foul. Like, just calm down. Like, don't be that angry that we've given away a free kick for something we've done wrong. And as you say, it's like, oh, is this a library? And it's like, no, it's just people just have come here to watch the football without being annoyed by you because you've decided that we should all be singing a song.
Yeah.
There are, the corner is notoriously the bit, and has been since we moved to the Rico in 2005, the bit where people sing. It was Singers Corner and all that jazz, and everyone knows you sat basically in what's now the family area because it's right next to the kids zone. You're with your child, maybe start adding 2 and 2 together and just like accept it is what it is.
But it's the arrogance. It's the arrogance of it. Of like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like me turning up to a netball game and like berating the players for like not throwing the ball fast enough or something. You're like, you. Why are you so vocal about this, mate? You obviously haven't got a clue what you're talking about. Why are you like? And again, I think it comes back to something away from football that we've always talked about on the podcast, which I think has been most exemplified by people getting on the pitch when they don't need to, is this really like attention-seeky bit of society where you're just like, get a rest. I know that your boss hasn't talked to you all week at work, but it's not my problem. Like, let's just get on with it.
I guarantee that.
Sorry.
I have this vision because I guarantee that guy would hate me because I've never once stood up because I love the Sky Blues. I'm watching the football. I don't need to stand up during that. Even if I can't see the game, it's like I just don't do it. And I love them very, very much, but I ain't standing up for it.
I don't feel like you need to prove that to the type of people who are asking you to prove it.
Yeah,
I think it's all right.
What are you doing, mate?
Yeah.
It does come back to that. So again, it's without sort of being sort of too. I said I've got two daughters. Been to lots of parties which are either all girls or like sometimes Mary's like the only girl or one of a couple of girls, and it's like it is very true. It's like you get a load of girls together and it's one type of party. You get a load of boys together, someone's got to be the cock. Someone's got to act the cock. And when one person does it, someone's got to out-cock him. And you get this sort of escalating of, look at me. And it's like, yeah, okay. And if you've got someone who's really good in charge of the party, they'll cut it down straight away. And once it's been sort of dealt with, everyone sort of gets, it's a completely different atmosphere. But if it's allowed to escalate, it just becomes into this dick-waving competition. And that's what it sort of was on Saturday. There was a couple of them. It was like the guy we were sort of talking about, but there was a couple of others, and it's just like, just calm down. Just take it easy. Okay, the football isn't great, but it's, you've come to watch the football. Don't turn around and sing a song to the stand, because they're not interested in you. We're not here to watch you. We don't give a shit about you. We're here to watch the other guys that we've actually paid to watch, and just take that on board. And you might enjoy yourself as well if you let yourself. But hey.
First of all, I love the fact that apparently you analyse every facet of human life much in the same way as you would a football match. Your assessment of a party there, you're like, what you need is you just need somebody to take charge, really sort of get in there, break it down. And
Mate, wait, you've got 2 sons. You just wait till you go to some of these parties. It's honestly.
Well, no, because I am the enforcer figure that you're talking about. I'm owning that party. I need to show character. Do you know what I mean?
You'll be like everyone else. You'll be stood at the side talking to some dad that you've met twice before because they've mildly shown some interest in football, and then everything's going hell around you because you don't want to be there. They're great fun. A bit like some of the Cov games we've been to be honest.
Secondly, it's very well established that you're back, Paul, because I think by this point we'd have probably been getting on to game 2, whereas I think we're on 12 minutes now and we're still talking about one individual fan so far at the last game that we went to. So we might want to move this on ever so slightly. I'm going to round things off with...
What was your moment of the week?
We're going to round things off with moment of the week that I took my 3-year-old for the first time on Saturday, and I have a cold, dead heart, and it was reawoken by going up the stairs over that, like under that flyover-y type bit where you get in towards the east stand? No, the opposite side. And just thinking about and without wanting to get too sentimental with you, Paul, all the sort of, 10, 15 years of me and you doing that walk and not really thinking about it, and then sort of seeing your children and my child, my oldest, doing it. And you just think, this is life passing us by, isn't it? Like, in a good way, like it's time moving and lots of lovely stuff. And it was doubly enjoyable the fact that he seemed to enjoy it, because it does mean now that I've got more of a an opportunity to actually go to games. So yeah, that was fantastic. I was worried he'd find it a bit overwhelming, but and again, a big shout out to the Family Zone. That was Ramo on Saturday, but I'd really underestimated the scale of what they're putting on there. They're having to cater for a lot of people over the course of that day, and they've got almost no budget, have they, apart from what they raise themselves. That's an incredible service that they're putting on, so that's a massive thank you to everyone involved in that. Right, okay, we've got Blackburn, Preston and Derby to talk about. Paul, you're going to sort of roughly roll Blackburn and Preston into one, I guess, by sort of doing just a couple of lines on Blackburn. Is that fair?
Well, due to
no,
my friend...
that's a no.
Well, no.
That's it. We'll see you again.
If you let me finish.
Close your mouth, because I'm going to be talking for the next 50 minutes unbroken. Go on, mate.
The good news is for everyone is my friend Ian got tickets very early for the Blackburn game. And because he got tickets very early, it meant we were in row 3. So when you're in row 3, directly behind the goal as well. So you can't see 90% of the pitch with any sort of confidence of there's no perception of distance. So it's a bit like listening to Clive Eakin on the radio. When your striker gets the ball, they could literally be 5 yards out or 50 yards out. You really don't know. So basically the Blackburn game, from what I remember, is we were all right-ish, and then we conceded a goal that was quite sloppy. And then Ben Sheaf does what Ben Sheaf does, which is give away a really sloppy pass. I know people are going, yeah, it was Michael Rose who passed in the ball. Yeah, If the ball's coming out you chest height and you don't know what to do with it, smack it into the crowd and let half-time come. Don't tie a cheeky little pass to Hyam and then stand there berating Hyam for the fact he didn't read your shitty little pass, and then watch the player who runs past you put the ball into the back of the net. And I know Sheaf gets a lot of unfair stick, but he doesn't in this occasion. He was at fault. Second half, we were all right-ish to start off with, but we clearly needed a sub. And then Kane put in a really good cross that Tyler Walker scored. And then we scored another goal by Liam Kelly. There is a really good video, which I don't seem to be anywhere anymore, that you can actually watch because we're in row 3. You can actually watch us sort of half celebrate, then not celebrate, and then celebrate because the ball went over the line. So that was quite funny to watch. And then we should have had a penalty on Victor, and they probably should have scored another 3 because we made some amazing blocks and the keeper made a good save. And that's about it, really. If anything, all 3 games are pretty similar in terms of our front 3 didn't quite work. Like, Gyökeres was good up until he should have won the penalty when, and everyone's seen the picture, his ankle ballooned to 3 times the size. And probably since that moment, he hasn't quite been at it in the following 2.5 games, or 2 and a bit games. Callum O'Hare did what Callum O'Hare does, apart from one point in the second half where he actually skinned past a couple of people inside the area, had a chance to shoot, and then went on for the 15th man who tackled him. And Tyler Walker walks around a bit, tries a bit harder than I think some people give him credit for, but also the ball doesn't stick. Onwards to Preston, which was slightly further up the M6. First half, we were slightly the better team. Is that fair to say, Joey?
I would say that we were comprehensively the better team in the first half, but I would suggest that was possibly more down to Preston not really bringing anything at all to the table.
I must say, against Blackburn, we played with 11 right-footed players. So in the first half, Dabo was on the right and Kane was on the left, and in the second half they swapped, and basically it was a case of neither of those two can play left wing. And also, Callum O'Hare couldn't quite get his head around the fact that Dabo was on the left-hand side, so he kept playing in passes as if he was Roberto Carlos. So he kept playing that pass right in front of him where it's too fast if you're on the left-hand side for you to try and kick it with your right foot because it's completely unnatural. So you've got to be able to take it with your left foot, which is fine if you're left-footed. But if you're right-footed, it's gone past your right foot before you realise. And because you're right-footed, you don't trust your left foot. So the ball kept going out of play. And it was like, can you please work out what's going on here? And then he made changes against Preston. If you start with Liam Kelly alongside Sheaf, or was that, because Hamer played against Blackburn, is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Did he start Kelly and Sheaf against Blackburn? I can't remember now. No, he did start Kelly and Sheaf against Blackburn because it was the same team that played against Fulham. So you think the problem is with the Preston game is we were okay, but Preston were pretty bad, and then we scored. And in the second half, Preston got their act together, and we went from being okay to being incredibly sloppy. And then they scored with that magnificent header, didn't they?
Yeah, it
was just a great header. But by that point, you were like, this game needs changing because Kelly's been shit. Sheaf doesn't really work. Walker's not really involved. Gyökeres is clearly just injured and shouldn't really be on the pitch. O'Hare looks knackered, and he's also having one of those games where his passing is really sloppy. And then you looked at the bench and you thought, maybe this is why he doesn't change things very often, because either he doesn't trust them, and we'll get on to Jody Jones in a bit, I think, or he's just not happy with them. But even Robbins admitted he waited too long for the subs, and by that point, Preston had gone 2-1 up and went on to win. And we played for 15 minutes at the end, where the man with the ball most in the opposition's half was Michael Rose. And I like Michael Rose, but he's not the man I want to build attacks with. And
very strange,
sort of
wasn't it?
Yeah. And it sort of indicated that we have a couple of big problems. And one of those problems is we don't really have a plan B because we have no physical players at all, especially up front. We have pretty lightweight players. Gyökeres is the most target man-ish, but even then, A, he was injured, B, he was off the pitch, and see he's still not the man you really want to sort of win lots of headers. So you're left with Waghorn, who isn't really a target man, and you're left with Carl Walker, who's definitely not a target man. And we didn't really have much pace in that game either. So, and Allen isn't a number 10, as he demonstrated the whole of last season, and again against Preston when he came on, and you were like, he doesn't want to play in that role. So that was our trip to the Lancashire. 2 pretty average games, quite a lot of sloppy mistakes. Can't really think of anyone who particularly shined in either game that they deserve a minute of praise on here, to be honest.
Neil, any questions?
Walker scored 2 and 2, which probably does deserve a bit of praise, because then he got dropped, which seems a bit unfair.
Can't really think of anybody, apart from the guy that hasn't really played this season who came in and scored in both games. Anyway, we're moving on. Neil, have you got any questions about those 2 games?
No, I quite like Paul's summary. The only thing which I found maybe more confusing, and I don't mind managers having a bit of a punt and going for something a little bit different, but I just feel a change which includes Gyökeres, O'Hare and Kelly seems too much of a shift of things that make us tick coming off the pitch all in one shot. And I mean, it's just I could see why he was doing it. He wanted to really shake up the team, but I don't necessarily think that was much of a smart move. Just because even if things aren't going right for those specific players, it's too much in one go, and you just shake up the dynamic too much. But
the problem is Sheaf and Kelly, and it's almost the sort of same thing we have with our 4 strikers. Sheaf, Kelly, and Hamer, however you want to pronounce his name these days. I was told off by Joe for calling him Hamer.
No, I wasn't. I mean, I don't think you can call that a telling off. But I think
he spent
it is.
5
I think
minutes
it is
berating me, calling me all sorts of names in front of the children. It was disgraceful.
Well,
They started to cry in the back of the car.
I think he has called himself Harmer, hasn't he?
Okay. The problem is with Harmer, Sheaf, and Kelly is they all basically want to do the same role, and Harmer is better than the other 2 at those attributes. And the problem is when you bring off Kelly and put on Sheaf, or vice versa, you're basically doing you're not forward in the game. There's no real change in what they're not offering anything different to each other. They're just slightly better at slightly different things. But neither of them are particularly offensive. Neither of them particularly really want to try and break the opposition down with running with the ball or sort of having long. I know sort of Kelly did have a long range shot, but that's like we can go back to not seeing Kelly have a long range shot for another 6 months now. They don't really try creative passes. They're both pretty similar, and the problem is sometimes when they play with Harmer, they sort of make Harmer look worse as well. And it's the same with the front 4. All the front four are technically very similar. It's just Gyökeres is better than the other 3 in all aspects. And then Walker and Gosden are quite good finishers, but they're not particularly quick. They're not particularly good at holding the ball up, and they're not particularly good at playing football that well. Waghorn is probably better at football, but isn't particularly tall or quick, and he's all right at scoring goals. He's probably out the 4, the least clinical. But none of them are tall and strong, which is what we needed against Preston, and none of them particularly lightning quick to stretch the opposition, which again would have been quite nice in one of those games. They're all very, very much of a muchness. So when Gyökeres isn't playing particularly well or is injured, you sort of left with who do you play, what partnership, because it doesn't quite look like it should. And that's where you sort of miss from last season, is we sort of forget. Don made a good point. I can't remember if it was on the WhatsApp group or on the internet. It's like last season, you forget towards the end of last season how reliant we were on Sam McCallum's long throws and Ostergaard and Biamu in the box. And you've lost all 3 of those players, but you haven't replaced the long throws, and you also haven't replaced any physicality. Because as good as Jake Clark-Salter has been at times, he's not really a physical presence in either box.
He's not Ostergaard, is he, by any stretch of the imagination?
No.
Right, good. Okay, well, in that case then, Neil, do you want to pick up from there on a derby game that I felt had got quite a lot of similarities to Preston? Before you start, have you been able to carry on watching from your vantage point in Transylvania?
Yes, I have.
That's good to know.
It's been good. So yeah, I haven't missed many minutes this season. It's always helpful.
So the reason
But
I
it's
ask
nice to be.
is that you
Go on.
saw the Preston game then, and I felt like it was a game that had got a lot of parallels with the Derby game. Would you say that was fair?
Yeah, I think all three of them in many respects, just because we showed in portions of all of them a level of kind of superiority, and then kind of lost sort of sense of ourselves, and there was quite a visible shift from that one version of the team to the other. And Derby was the same. I thought Derby aren't the worst team in the league. So, that's fair to say. I think they're relatively solid. They've got some good stuff going for them, but I also think that we are a strong team, and when we're playing well, and certainly when we start games with intensity, and I think there was a lot on Saturday where we started well. We had pretty much the team that you'd expect out there. I mean, the only you maybe Sheaf or Kelly, Godden or Walker, much of a muchness really in terms of shape. You had the exciting home formation and team and dynamic all back. And I thought, the performance of the first half against Derby was one where we certainly looked confident and we were playing some really good stuff at time. But there was just that hint of the things that make us clinical or have made us clinical so far this season weren't quite the same. So Gyökeres, it's mad to think that there's a single moment in time where he's gone from being totally dominant and impeccable in his play to being a little bit off it. And it is that moment that Paul mentioned, where that penalty where he should have got a penalty, it's done his ankle in. He's still playing games, so they must think he's okay. But for some reason, he doesn't quite have and hasn't had quite the same level of dominance over his opposing players, and that could be because he's come up with people who are actually stronger than him, which hasn't been the case for this season. But I certainly thought against Derby he had his moments, but he wasn't looking the same dominant force that we'd seen in the other home games, and not quite as quick, and just not really keeping the ball as well as he had been as well, which is another thing that we said in the previous pod, where the man just didn't give the ball away, it seemed. Against Derby, there were some touches and things going awry, which was just unusual. But I think in the longer term, you have to accept he is going to give the ball away. So let's not be too greedy about that.
For me, it was absolutely, and I know this is an assumption and that you can never quite tell. And it's me and Paul were talking before we started and complaining about people putting 2 and 2 together and making 5. But I'm going to do it as well because I'm a huge hypocrite. I just thought it was super obvious that he wasn't fit. I just thought he didn't look. I just think he got a few digs in the first half against Derby, and then from that point on, he was like, "This ain't for me. Like, this ain't." And I don't blame him. I just think he looks really tired and like he's got a leg that's swelled up 3 times the size. Like, I think the way that he plays,
it's really interesting.
Like you say, with the fact that. I think the thing that's been so exceptional about him this season isn't his goals. I think it's that you can give him a square pass 40 yards from goal and he can take on any number of players, either by skill or brute force, and bring the ball 30 yards up the pitch and create either something for someone else to then bring him back into play, or he can fashion a shot out of it just through sheer strength of will. And it doesn't matter who's on him, who's kicking him, doing anything. He's able to do it. He hasn't done it at all in the last 2 games. And I don't think it's because he's lost his confidence. I think he's got a leg. I think he's carried around a leg that's 3 times the size it was a few weeks ago.
Well, also, as we said, if you look at the stats, there's only Bournemouth who are top with 8. They've conceded 8 goals. Derby have only conceded 11 goals all season. They're very pragmatic at the back, and they've got.
I don't think it's that though, is it?
There aren't many teams in the Championship who've got 2 former England internationals at centre half. Now, Curtis Davies and Phil Jagielka might be the average combined age of like 94, but they are very, very experienced professionals who aren't going to be surprised by Gyökeres. So you almost a half fit Gyökeres against those two. probably made him
But
look
that's not
slightly
But then
off the pace.
that's to suggest that what Gyökeres does is occupy two centre backs, and I don't think he does. I think his starting position is much, much, much deeper. I think if you think about where he got fouled on Saturday and the kind of the instances of him complaining, was he complaining and getting fouls around the box, or was he complaining and getting fouls around the halfway line? It was round by the halfway line. I don't think it's anything to do with Jagielka and Davies.
No, but I think, it's earlier in the season he was playing further up the pitch. I think
He wasn't on Saturday.
I think the problem is, I think almost he was looking for the ball wherever he could get it to get involved in the game, especially in the second half. He was just basically just going anywhere to get involved, wasn't he? Because he was just frustrated by that point.
I think he's occupied exactly the same position all season.
Ultimately, he shouldn't have been on the pitch. I think is what I think we all agree, isn't it?
Yeah, with our 2020 hindsight, I guess. Yeah,
But the thing is, with the 2020 hindsight, having seen him against Preston really struggling, and that was his third game in a week, having been away with Sweden as well, I think he was both physically knackered, but also he was injured.
Yeah,
clearly he was injured. And
I must be going mad though, because I look at him and I look at him and I just think, oh, he looks like Gyökeres of last season now. Where he just kept looking, he looks like a slow motion player most of the time. And even this season, when you look at him, you're like, you're really slow, and he's just steamrolling people, and he still looks slow while being fast, and he's just got that way about him. And I just kind of looked at him and I thought, well, you kind of remind me of last season, where you look like you're running in treacle, but it's only because we're comparing him against how good he's been. And suddenly you think, oh, you hope it's because it's an injury rather than the version of himself which from last year. I mean, now you're saying it and talking about it, I'm like, well, he probably did have a really bad ankle, and I'm hoping that's what it was, because it was just disappointing, because I don't like the idea, because I built up in my mind that suddenly we found this striker who was going to dominate everybody he comes up against, and I didn't like the idea that in the last 2.5 games he's met his match, because that's annoying. We could do with him not beating his match, because if he's not scoring, our team functions at the highest level that we can do when he is on the pitch and he is doing well for us. That we're a totally different version of ourselves when he's not on the pitch. And it's kind of my point in the previous game where, he wasn't quite doing it, but we are just a different kind of team without him, O'Hare, and those type of players on the pitch. Whether they're playing well specifically or not, we have to just do it a different way if they're not there.
We should have sold Gyökeres in October in case he doesn't ever reach those heights again. We should have found.
We just want the memories.
Well, so it goes back to 2 points, doesn't it? One of them is the point I made earlier, where it's the same for O'Hare. The thing, O'Hare's, and whether we discuss it now or discuss it later. The thing with O'Hare is we have no one else who can play number 10. It's not a case we have no one else who could play better than O'Hare in that position. We literally have no other player who you would play as number 10 at the club. And I'm not going to discuss, and I know I'm about to say his name, I'm not going to discuss him because there's no point discussing Bright, because he's not in the under 23s. He's nowhere near the first team. And if you
is he anywhere in the country?
Oh God, no. If you go back to listen to the pre-season pod, that was one of the things that we raised. We raised the fact that last season it was clear that O'Hare needed to be dropped at times. He needed to be taken out of the firing line because his performances dropped, but he had no replacement. And in the summer, the only replacement we brought in was on a free, who's been released by his last 2 clubs because he isn't getting into the position where he should be, either physically or mentally or whatever reason. We don't have a replacement for Callum O'Hare. And that is a major issue, because we have a number 10 who doesn't score goals. And it is an issue when your strikers aren't scoring goals. And as good as Callum O'Hare might be at lots of other things, we're getting to the point in the last calendar year, he scored 2 goals. And that is a big issue. If we want to push forward, if we want to stay where we are, that is a massive issue. The next thing is the segue of that is you're talking about maybe Gyökeres is just reverting to type, where he's had an amazing start but isn't actually as good as we all hope he was. You could almost point the finger at quite a few players in the team at the moment. You could say the same about Maatsen, who in the last couple of performances has really looked below his best. And again, is that regressing to the fact that he is just an okay player? Is it the fact that he's just having that natural dip that we've always discussed on this pod about young players break into the team, can be brilliant to start off with, then once their youthful enthusiasm goes away, they ebb and flow, and he's just going through a natural dip before he then lights again and becomes the player we know the player he was at the start of the season, or is he just reverting to this is him? He's a good player at times. He's 18, so he's not going to be brilliant every week. Like, did we just catch fire at the start of the season where we had all these players hit the high notes, but they're just reverting to what they actually are, which probably, if you take that across the whole team, is probably a mid-table championship team. And we're 3 points above, 7 teams? There's 7 teams on 21 points. In 2 games' time, we could be 12th.
Nice simple question for you to answer there, Neil.
Think
if you can keep that to 3-word answers.
Sorry, Joe, I talked all over you there.
That's all right. I was just saying that there's a nice simple question that Paul has posed to you there amongst the 50 different questions that he asked that sounded like he was talking to the universe. Could you try and answer that in 2 words, 3 words?
I didn't catch the question, so I'm just going to answer my own question that I had in my own head at the time. So, I mean, I don't necessarily... I because it's only been a handful of games and it's all happened within the period of a week, I don't place anything particularly fundamental on the fact that while I think Djokovic looked very much more like the player that we saw last year, I don't have a judgment that the stuff that happened at the beginning of the season isn't what he's capable of moving forward. I think he can do that, and I'm always okay with players like dropping their levels. Sometimes it's going to happen, and it's been a phenomenal start to the season, and even within the periods of the game where they are performing at good levels, but it's just dropping more regularly at the moment. And when you look at the 3 games as a whole, again, I don't normally look at a draw and feel okay with it just because I'm mad like that. But the Blackburn one was, I took the game as a whole, and it looked to me, we had a period in the second half where we weren't playing very well after we just got back to 2-2, and I was okay with that dip because we're so used to them playing poorly for a concerted amount of time, like 3, 4, 5 games, actually poor performances. But I'm not seeing full game poor performances. I'm just seeing kind of drops, and that could be down to the fact that they've just had a big period of high intensity matches. I don't know. I don't want to be too harsh on some of the players and suddenly worry that Maatsen isn't going to be the player that we think he is, or Gyökeres. Or I saw some mad criticism of Hayem over the last week just because he's made a couple of errors, and I'm thinking there's one player that you don't criticise or make fundamental judgments of, and it's Dom Hayem. If you can play that well for 2 years solid and then have a couple of mistakes, if people are going to start judging you and trying to pull you out of the team for a couple of mistakes, then football's not your game, because it's insane. Certain players are allowed to make a couple of mistakes. You keep an eye on it, but he's done so much for the team and he's been so solid. He's not a robot,
Especially this season. This season, he's really stepped up again, hasn't he? And been fantastic.
Yeah, I'm not having it. Did I have anything else to say about Derby? Stuff happens, isn't it? But we're not very good at talking about stuff.
Well, I mean, what stuff are you alluding to? Are you talking about the kind of the other stuff?
The main stuff. The stuff that people want to hear about. People that put like shapes and lines on pictures and tactics and stuff. Do we do that? We don't do that, do we?
We can do, but I think I say the problem is it's like all 3 games are technically the same. It's just slightly different variations on the theme, whether or not you thought we were better in the first half than the second half.
I had some specific stuff actually. I just want to talk about James' free kick, which he's got that in his locker. That's useful. He never really gets the opportunity for one of those kind of free kicks. For some reason, we don't get him in that area very often. But that was something else. And it was you don't know what to say about whether it was onside or offside. It was just one of those tight calls that the linesman decided to give. I was at a loss to understand what had happened because I was absolutely certain it was an own goal. So the fact that it was given as an offside really frustrated me. But yeah, it's nice to see Hammer, who I actually thought had a really good game the other day. I thought he took control of it, and he was in a good place when some of the players around him weren't quite there.
I think if anything, he's performed. He's one of the only players who hasn't dropped off. I think for him, it's making sure he's not alongside Kelly. I think it was the same last season. Those two just can't work. They just don't work together. And I know sort of criticism of Robbins is always kept to an absolute minimum because he's done an amazing job. But when he brought on Kelly on Saturday, it was just like, oh, you've not only solved the issue that, I mean, Sheaf was playing all right actually on Saturday. He wasn't great, wasn't poor. He was okay. But by bringing on Kelly, you were like, you've not solved an issue that we had, but also now Hamer gets less of the ball where he wants it, and Kelly's just in the way, and that dynamic doesn't work. It's never worked. But also, I think it sends a message to Derby. It's like, oh, they're bringing on a defensive midfielder. Okay, that's I think that sometimes it's like that's a boost for the opposition team. When Derby made more adventurous subs, they made subs which sort of got them going, and we brought on a player who, I like Kelly, but he's not really a galvanising, yay, Kelly's come on. It's like, oh, we're sitting. Okay. Let's see how this goes. And that's, again, it's like, I feel really... Jamie Allen, okay, he was involved in the Luton 5-0. We've barely seen him since. And he was really important to the way we were playing. Like, he was driving us forward. His energy was linking the midfield and the attack. And you do have that problem sometimes when you play sort of 3-4-1-2, that your back seven can drop too deep and there's a big gap that needs to be breached. And it's Alan was doing that. He was letting Hamer do what he wanted to do where he wanted to do it and was keeping out of his way, but he was always available for a pass.
Do you put any of that down to unfortunate circumstance, just in the sense that players around him were being suspended and having to fall out of the team, and Robbins is judging it as a kind of wider thing? Well, I can't then put Alan in with him because the other areas aren't quite as solid, or they're not as they're a little bit untried. Because I look at that team and it's like we've been having to shift things around most of the time. If you go back 4 or 5 games, we wouldn't have changed the team if things had all been well. But with suspensions and all that sort of stuff kicking in, suddenly we're changing things here and there, and then somebody has a good game and you feel like you've got to keep them in, and it's just like, if only things had just retained their normality 5 games ago, maybe that wouldn't have happened.
Me and Pritchard had a big discussion about this, about sort of it's how do you earn your place in the team? How do you, like, if you think of Tyler Walker for a prime example, he scored 2 goals in 2 games. He literally couldn't have done anything more, and he was dropped. And I know Godden was coming back from suspension, but no, like, Walker was dropped. He had the shirt. He'd earned that position, and he was dropped. And I know other people I thought Godden was quite poor on Saturday. I thought his distribution, his hold-up play, especially in the second half, was really poor. And when we needed him in the second half to sort of take the lead as the lead striker, he didn't do it. And we couldn't get the foothold into the game. And when you compare him to Kazim Richards when he came on for Derby, they had a focal point. They played lots through him, and he really boosted Derby. And I thought Godden was quite poor, but Godden Godden got into the team against Fulham, had a good game against Fulham, especially second half. First half he was all right. Second half, you think Alan, he's played 5 league games, 4 of them we kept clean sheets in and we won them. He had the Luton game, which is a sort of, I didn't see the Luton game. I get the feeling it wasn't due to the midfield, it was due to other issues. And we haven't seen him since, or we've seen him as a cameo in a role that doesn't suit him. And it's like, well, how's Alan going to get back into the team to get his chance?
You're right, though.
If he's always third choice after Sheaf and Kelly are in the team, but Alan not getting in the look in the book. So how can he get his position back?
I do agree with you on that point. So it's kind of, so if you've got the 2 options, the 2 things you're looking at there is the Allen dilemma and the Walker dilemma. On the face of it, you look at Allen and you think, can you play there? But in the wider picture, he's doing a good job. The team plays well when he's there, and while it might not make absolute sense from a pure football point of view, it works. And that's one way you sort of think, well, stick with it, even if things don't look like they have worked. Whereas Walker is, I'm okay with I was okay with taking him out of the team because while he scored a couple of goals, did it mean that the team was functioning as well as it possibly could do? Even though he got his couple of goals. I mean, it's that big question, isn't it? What's more important? One individual player looking like having a good game, but if it's not serving the wider team and making it as a stronger unit as possible. And I always hark back to the Ben Stevenson example, where in my mind you've got a really classy technical player who himself played really well, but I never thought it served the team for whatever reason. And he was an example where he could be, well, you're dropping me, but you might look at it and just think you are not doing the right kind of job for us. And that was the Walker example specifically. I just thought, I'm okay with you not. I know you scored a couple of goals, but I'm okay with you not going there because I felt like either Waghorn or Gordon kind of support the team dynamic a little bit more.
But on the counter to that is, I think Waghorn is better for this team than Gordon.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. So I'm not saying I don't care who they brought in. It could be either one, but I'm just saying I didn't think bringing Walker out of the team is an issue because I feel like one of the strikers probably works with Gyökeres better.
I get that, but I think the problem is it's sort of you're almost you can't say anything to Walker, can you?
No,
like,
you can't.
You can't. How do you water down like you're dropped? I scored 2 goals in 2 games. Yeah, but you dropped. It's sort of. But I've done everything I can. It's like, yeah, but I think this guy's better than you, and it's like, well, okay.
You got to do it.
But
I mean, what do you do? Do you spend all season like letting this one guy knowing that it's not serving the, and it's really harsh. I don't mean it to be that harsh.
I said that, but I think the thing is, in the 2 games against Preston and Blackburn, I never thought the issues weren't Walker, and I think, as I said, that the problem is
the obvious issues weren't Walker.
I mean, there are issues at the moment. It's like I know he does lots of running, and everyone loves him. I haven't seen O'Hare have a good away game yet. I haven't seen him play really well away from home. I've seen him be all right, and I've seen him been pretty sloppy in possession. And it's like, I know he does lots and lots of good stuff, but I didn't think he was average against Derby. Like, I don't think Derby were particularly worried about him. And you're like, well, we've got no replacement for him, so he's going to play. It's like whatever happens, he's going to play. And it's a bit like that with Maatsen. It's like whether or not he comes back, it's like we've got no other option because he's sort of shown no inclination he's going to play Josh Reed. But then it's sort of, you go back to those two, and it's like, well, the interesting issue between those two is you do have Jody Jones, and it's like, well, why have we retained Jody Jones if even against Fulham when we were 4-1 up with 10 minutes to go, it's like play him as the number 10. Like, take O'Hare off. He's had a good game. Take him off and give Jody Jones 10 minutes behind the striker in a game where technically we've already won. Like, just see what he does. Or against Preston, it's like, well, you want to play someone as number 10. Why? I don't even know if Jody Jones on the bench against Preston, but it's sort of, well, like, why are we retaining Jody? What are we looking to get out of Jody Jones? Are we just waiting to get to January, then we're going to loan him out? Then why have him in the match day squad each week? Like, where are we going with his career? Is he going to have one? And I said, if I was Walker, I'd be on the phone to my agents going, look, I was top goal scorer last season for Cov in the Championship. I've got 2 in 2. Start making, discussions in January for maybe me getting out of here, because he's basically indicated I'm 4th choice. Because
he didn't do anything else. He scored. It sounds horrible. He scored a couple of goals, but he wasn't support. He didn't do a huge amount. Like, isn't it way more complicated than just saying you've had a good game? So regardless of what I think my best team is, I'm just going to keep playing you.
But the thing is, he's the striker. That's his job. His job is to score goals, and he scored 2. I am a big one for like goals aren't everything, but ultimately in 2 games he scored 2 goals. So he could be like, have you done your job? Well, my name's on the score sheet, so yes, I've done my job. You bought me to score goals. You knew what you were signing when you signed me. Like, let's not sort of beat around the bush here. We all know that Walker's strengths are, and his strength is finishing. His strengths
even if the team's not functioning.
Yeah, I said, I don't think the team was not functioning because of Tyler Walker.
Not necessarily, but it's way more complex. And
I agree with that. But I don't think the team worked any better with Godden on Saturday. I thought Godden.
I don't think it fixed it, but I can absolutely see why there's a change.
I just think that
Because it's so early in the season already.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I think you almost like if Walker had scored 6 goals, would he have still been dropped? It's like he was in a team that didn't really create many chances, and he scored the chances he got. So he's done his function, and it's a bit. We had it. Me and Joey discussed it. It's like when Leon Best scored a hat trick against someone back in the day, and then a week later he was rested for Clinton Morrison and Freddie Eastwood, and you were like, well, he's done his job. Like, he deserves his chance, whether or not he's been the best player for the team. But maybe if you give him 5 games and he scores all 5 games, maybe his all-round play would get better. But he's done his job.
Would you do the same with Reece Charles Cook in goal? Keeping goal.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's like Reece Charles Cook started. He got what? He kept 7 clean sheets, then he started dropping the ball left, right, and centre, didn't he? The main one being Oldham away.
Just keep an inch anyway, just at the risk of. It's a terrible analogy, but it's just like, individual performance doesn't necessarily factor into the fact if you're trying to build something and you feel like the dynamic that you want from your team is going to come from a different way, and longer term you're going to be able to build something more sustainable. That's what Robbins does, doesn't he? He's harsh like that.
Yeah, no,
and it is harsh. I know it's harsh. I feel like I've been dismissive of Walker to say no, you haven't done anything, but he has done anything. I'll get that, but
no, I do get your point. I think there's points to be ruthless. I think the thing is I don't see Godden as being a massive step up on Tyler Walker. I think when he got rid of Grimmer and he brought in Sterling, you're like, yeah. And he got rid of Tom Davis and he brought in a centre half.
I went like that, yeah. But okay.
You're like, yeah, that's okay. You've got rid of a player you don't deem good enough, and you brought in a better player. That's your job. In this one, it's like you bought Tyler Walker for quite a lot of money. You've given him the opportunity. He's got in due to Godden's suspension. He's done his job. He deserves to keep his place. Okay, you've dropped him. So almost if Tyler Walker comes on as a sub and scores, doesn't mean he's going to start the following week. It's like where are your parameters? Where are the, and as I say, it goes back to the Allen thing. Allen now he's not been given the opportunity to force his way back into the team. A team he's probably very unlucky to be dropped from in the first place. And I understand what you're saying. It's like he's trying to, it's all for the greater good. I get that. But bringing on Kelly for Sheaf isn't the greater good. It's just doing the same thing again.
Yeah, that's a punt rather than, because he's got 3-4 days to build out his team for the weekend, whereas in the match he's like, right, I'm going to have to try and shift this somehow. And I think most subs are just, most subs are a punt, aren't they? Really, they're just somebody having a little thing, and then it's not the work of a genius to bring on another centre midfield for another one. You're just trying to make an alteration to the team.
No, but the thing is, it's like you've got 2 options, haven't you, on the bench? You've got Allen and you've got Kelly, and one of them is basically Sheaf but 7 years older, and the other one's a completely different player. And he went for Sheaf 7 years older. He made a decision to basically go like for like. He could have tried something different. He could have opened the game up a bit, and it's like, not putting Robbins in this pantheon, but not all great managers are great at managing during the game. Arsene Wenger was notoriously terrible at managing during the game. His subs were notoriously pretty bad.
What would you do then, Paul?
Pardon?
What would you have done?
I would have bought on. I probably would have bought on Waghorn rather, and I'm going against what I'm just saying about Tyler Walker, but I don't think Tyler Walker and Godden ever work. I've never seen that as a partnership. So I think if you've got one on one pitch, you bring Waghorn on. With the squad, I would have brought Allen on instead of Kelly, because I would have given us more legs and sort of tried to get someone in around O'Hare. I probably would have brought on Jody Jones just to give him a chance in the top. But I wouldn't have gotten to this point of the season. In the summer, I would have bought a Max Biami replacement. I would have bought in a physical striker. I probably wouldn't have bought Waghorn. I'd have bought in someone else. Or I would have tried to get rather Godden or Walker, because I don't think we need both Godden and Walker at the club, because I don't think they work together and they're pretty similar.
You might have been screwed at the weekend though, weren't you? Because Joker is injured, as we just said, and you can't play Golden and Walker. It's like, but you want to bring a Waghorn.
Well,
You then
that,
have to-
yeah, I mean, that as I said, I don't. Those four strikers are too similar for me. I wouldn't have gone into the season with those four strikers because I don't like the options. I think it's Gyökeres and one of the other three who is Gyökeres light. It's just Waghorn I think works better with Gyökeres because I think Waghorn's drops a little bit deeper and sort of keeps out Gyökeres' way. I think the problem with Walker and Godden, and you can see it at times, they both want to make the same run because they're both the same side of striker. That's fine. It's like, of course they want to make the same run. They want the same chances because they want to do the same thing. That's fine because that's what they are. But we knew that last season that they were exactly the same striker. It was just what we also had last season. We had Biamu, and I'm not advocating re-signing Biamu. I understand why we let Biamu go. I would have just brought in someone who, with 10 minutes to go against Preston, I can bring on up front, who's going to be a bastard to play against. And we brought on Waghorn, who's not a bastard to play against.
I like the idea of Chris Badland sitting down with you at the end of the season and saying, "Right, Paul, talk me through your transfer targets for the next season." And you say, "I'm looking for someone largely that I can bring up front for the last 10 minutes of Preston away from home would be ideal." Is that your remit to what you would have gone for?
I would have gone, what would Martin O'Neill have done in this situation? And he would have brought on the biggest man he had on the bench. Football is relatively simple. Unless you've got brilliant footballers, at some point you just need a battering ram. And, Neil Warnock's made a whole career out of just basically having at least 3 battering rams on his bench. Sometimes you just need someone who's big, tall and strong. That's what we had last season. We had Ostergaard at the back, who was big, tall and strong. And we had Biamu up front, who was big, tall and strong. And it is cynical.
You're holding out for a hero, by the sounds of it.
Pardon?
You're holding out for a hero.
I'm holding out for a big, strong man.
You're Bonnie
like
Tyler.
Everyone else.
Yeah.
But it's sort of, and it's just, but you sort of, it's hard, isn't it? Because basically we've had a brilliant start to the season. We are fourth, and it's like you can talk it down a bit. And it's, I went to all 3 games, and it's a bit soul sapping at times because in those 3 games we probably had 90 minutes of good football. We had 180 minutes of average to poor football, quite sloppy football. In all 3 games, there were spells where, and the thing about Preston was, I love Hyam and I love Dabo, and against Preston, they were so sloppy in possession. They kept giving the ball. They weren't massive clangers, but they were clangers enough that Preston kept getting the ball back. And against Preston as well, Liam Kelly, who again I love. Everyone loves Liam Kelly. He's been with us since League 2. His passing was poor. He kept getting the ball back, and you're like, this is the problem. Is we've probably flown a bit too close to the sun too early in the season. So we've started magnificently, unless you look at our away form, which is pretty poor. And at some point, it's going to catch up with us if we're not continuing to be magnificent at home. And against Derby, we played all right in the first half. I don't think we played that much worse in the second half. I just thought Derby upped their game a bit more and were a bit more adventurous against us. You can put that to the back burner now. In the last 5 games, we've played Luton, who aren't particularly great. They hammered us. We played Fulham, who are good, and they were the better team for 45 minutes, and we were amazing for 45 minutes. You got Blackburn, who are an average team, and we were average against. Preston, who are an average team, and we were average against. And Derby, who are quite a solid, pragmatic team, and we were average against them. We are probably reverting to where we're going to finish the table, which will probably be around about 12th. And we'll all go, we had an amazing start to the season. And 12th is fine because it's better than last season, which was a relegation dogfight.
I would say, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you would rather have a poor start and finish well and then finish 12th, wouldn't you? But I think you'd have to be pretty churlish to turn your nose up at 12th this season, no matter how we started.
I think you've got to embrace it what it was. It was brilliant. Like the Fulham game was brilliant. Being top of the table for 5 minutes against Peterborough on a Friday night was brilliant. And I think you've got to embrace not saying not thinking, oh, I hope it doesn't go well from here. I've as I said, I've seen the last 3 games. I see how the tide is going, and it's going towards. We've got good players. We don't have a bench. Like, we don't have 16, 17 players. Like, you look at some of the other teams, which is obvious because they're teams like Bournemouth who've been in the Premier League recently. They've got match changes on the bench. We've got Jody Jones, who we won't bring on. It's, that's the reality. We are into the second year of the cycle in the Championship. It might take us 4 years in the cycle of the Championship to be a top 6 side. That's not, it's not hardship, is it? It's sort of where we've come from and all that sort of jazz. We're good to watch. Like, we've got some good players. It's just you need transfer windows. We've only had 3 in the Championship. It might take us 5 or 6 to get all the players in the right positions.
I agree. I would like us to move on, but not before we talk about the only important thing that we haven't talked about so far, which is the Harmer free kick before the disallowed goal. Has anyone in their entire life seen a free kick be so over the bar until it hit the bar?
Got the technique, hasn't he? Aren't we lucky? I always thought randomly that Jordan Willis had that very same technique after I saw him do it once in the pre-match warm-up, and I was furious that over as many years with us he didn't once take a free kick. But you only have to connect once, don't you? And it's I'm excited now.
But even by sort of modern standards of hitting the valve and all of those kind of Ronaldo things that people talk about or whatever, that was ballooning over.
It shocked the keeper, didn't it? The keeper almost gave up on it. He thought that's going nowhere near my goal. That's like Beckham's penalty against Turkey. That's still rising.
I don't need to do anything about a shot that's 20 yards over the bar. Oh, hang on a second. Yeah, I mean, magnificent stuff. Any final thoughts on those games before? Paul, I saw you canvassing for questions, and given that we seem to get about 1,000, I feel like we should probably attempt to answer at least 3 of them.
We'll quickly whiz through a couple. We all right to move on to questions?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, Dom isn't here to do his preview of Hull. Hull is shit. We really should beat them. There you go. Dean Windass, Nicky Barmby.
You're going to a big aquarium, I think?
The kids going to the aquarium. I gave my youngest the option of going to the aquarium or going to the football. She's going to the aquarium now.
Okay. She changed her mind then?
Yeah, we knew she would. She's as much as she loves spending time with her father, she'd rather see big fish. Okay, quite a few people have asked this. Mike Seaton and Sky Blues Fans TV have asked, are we a better side with Jamie Allen?
Neil, do you want to take that?
It all depends on the circumstances. We can be. He looks like he's played well for us, and he does a good job. There'll be certain circumstances where it doesn't work because he's not high-end Championship player where everything can revolve around him. There'll be times where it doesn't work, and without being too weird about it, like, I trust Robbins broadly. He's done enough for us for me to think, okay, I'll let him make his judgments over the course of a week in training and all that sort of stuff. And if he thinks that's something that's going to work for us, who am I to judge, eh? I think he's a good player, Jamie Allen, and I think he'll get a load of opportunities this season. But I haven't been too put out by the fact that he hasn't been in the team because you're looking to do something different. Did I just see a reaction on Skype?
Yeah, that was the thing came up and I didn't know how to get rid of it, so I pressed one of them until it came up. I didn't press that one.
For the listener,
quite a statement.
For a listener there, we've been doing this for 10 years or so, and I've never seen this before. So we record on Skype, but via audio only, so our cameras are off. But I think Neil and I both have the same reaction there to like a load of unhappy face emojis sort of like cascading up the screen.
Perfectly timed, coming from Paul. I was like, is this what we're doing now? Is it 2021?
I think that's really thrown both of us.
Go on. On the Jamie Allen thing, I think Jamie Allen's a bit like, remember the reason Sweden got relegated, and Ruben Ramirez basically, he if you look at the form of the team when he was in it, they were basically a top 6 team. But when he didn't play, we lost virtually every time. And he'd get in the team and we'd play all right, and we'd win, and then he'd be dropped for 3 games and we'd lose all 3. I'm not saying that it's always that, and I think you've sort of proposed this previously, Neil, where sometimes it doesn't quite make sense, but it works. And I think Alan and Harmer works. I think it's
I'm
just
okay
a
with that.
dynamic, and I think
That's a thing.
also Alan's sort of got quite a few assists. I know O'Hare nicked one of them against Middlesbrough. Or was it Middlesbrough? Was it Millwall when he sort of passed the ball that didn't need to be passed? But Alan's got quite a few assists, and I think he's driving and passing from midfield is that link that we've missed at times. And I felt really sorry for him when he came on as a number 10 against Preston, because you could just see he didn't want to. He doesn't want to be on the half turn. He doesn't want to be that advanced getting the ball. He wants to be that advanced on the ball, if that makes sense. But yeah, Joey.
Sorry, I missed the question.
Jamie Allen, yay or nay?
I've got to say the same with Neil. I just think everything's context, isn't it? So what I would say is that outside of does he make us better or not, what I am surprised at is the fact that he's been dispensed with so quickly without a route back into the team, because there's been plenty of substitutions over the last 3 games that have involved a sort of malfunctioning central midfield duo that have attempted to be rectified, given that he wasn't in the first team for any of the 3 of them, by someone else coming on other than him. And I know that he has appeared, but that he doesn't seem to be the first choice, nor the answer to the problem in game. That's what I'm surprised by, is for a player who emerged and was so pivotal in our kind of uptick from being, impressive to very impressive. The fact that he's just been sort of cast asunder is surprising, isn't it? But I don't know whether, I don't know whether he is the central figure in that, or whether there's a more general kind of, malaise, without wanting to be too up my own arse.
I think sometimes it's a case of who's your best player, who works best with them. Anyway,
Yep.
Mike Seaton all wants to know, can you kill a tiger armed only with a biro? Which,
I guess. Well, you can.
My wife didn't get that, but I'm assuming it's a quote from The Office.
No, I don't think it is. I think it's just someone asking a weird question for the sake of asking a weird question, which is fine.
It was, wasn't it? I think it was.
The tiger and a biro.
Yeah.
Did that come up? Gareth to? It was one of. No, it was one of Tim's to Gareth, wasn't it? Pretty sure. Mike Seaton's an Office aficionado, as I recall.
Yeah,
you have to Google this one.
Tim, you're thinking, how could I kill a tiger armed only with a biro?
Yeah. I had a feeling it was an Office quote mainly aimed at you two. And will Robbins ever tie his bloody shoelaces?
What?
I didn't realise he didn't show them.
That is so... your surprise at that, Neil, confuses me, because I could only imagine that you would have written that question.
I could only imagine that I would have noticed this. I'm more surprised that I haven't spotted him not tying off his shoelaces to rogue git.
It's a big Allison level observation, that is.
I know. I'm furious with myself. And him.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Gilbert has asked the simplest question of all time, which doesn't require any thought process. Where do you think we're going to finish and why? I'm not even going into that because we're literally already in an hour in. But thanks for that question. You obviously knew the rabbit hole that would send us down. Nizzy wants to know, what are the chances of us getting rid of players not involved and bringing in reinforcements during the January window? So to make that question simpler, I'll ask both of you 2 players to get rid of and a position you would strengthen.
Sorry, very quickly, I would just like to reflect on the idea that we approached all questions like you did that one, where you read it out and then you go, "No, I don't think we'll be answering that." Anyway, moving on.
All right, so
Nope.
Joey, I want 2 players you're going to get shot of and a position you're going to strengthen.
So I want us to have an option at number 10. So
Okay. So who are you going to sacrifice for that option?
Well, presumably, I don't know. So there's a load of players currently in the squad who are nowhere near being in the squad. So I think the answer is quite boring, isn't it? I think the answer is that you'd get rid of Jabello or Hilsner, who are even further down the pecking order, presumably, than Enabakari or Jones. So I know as well is that, and the elephant in the room here is Jordan Shipley is nowhere near the team at the minute, is he?
He was on the bench the other day.
But I think that what would it have taken for him to have come on?
Well, it took enough for Jamie Allen to come on, and he's played well. So God knows what it's taken for Shipley to come on.
But this is what I mean. So I think that I would like us to see a different type of number 10 available to us. I think you could go completely the other way, and I would like us to see sign a kind of, a very romantic idea of a fat old genius.
Do you want Prosinecki?
Prosinecki or Paul Merson.
We've got the same thing in mind, haven't we?
Yeah, because I just think that the problem that we had more than anything against Preston was, I think if we had the option available to us earlier in the game, we wouldn't have conceded, because we could have done something that would have changed the game in such a way that Preston would have been thrown off kilter before they got the ability to build the momentum that got them back into the game. And I think the same with Derby. And I think that, far be it from me to introduce a new massive topic of conversation, but I am surprised that we haven't talked about the overall malfunctioning of Callum O'Hare over the last few games. But that what I feel like we needed was a player that could occupy a different, skill set and ask different questions of the opposition. So I think that, Paul Merson coming on and jogging on, blowing out of his arse as he comes on, but then all of a sudden unlocking passes and sort of bringing people into play very differently than the kind of, sort of physical dynamism of Callum O'Hare reframes what happens in that area of the pitch. And I think that what's interesting is that you would imagine that is literally what Enabakari was brought in to do, and yet he couldn't be further away from providing it. So what does that mean? So I think you could name any number of players of who you dispense with, but for me it's literally one answer in terms of the position, and it's number 10.
Neil? I did mention Callum O'Hare earlier when I said that he scored once in 50 games.
Yeah, I could see you were trying. You were trying to bait that conversation, but that it didn't quite take off in the way that you were hoping it would do, would you?
No, I was just finally got to the end of my tether with everyone telling me how great Callum O'Hare is, and it's like, he is good, but with this massive fucking caveat, this elephant in the room that he doesn't score, and he doesn't unlock the door, does he? He doesn't, as you say, he doesn't play that killer through ball. And he's sort of, I've never known a Cov player, an attacking player, who's given so much license to not score. It's unbelievable how much he's allowed not to actually score ever. It's like, attacking midfielder, you don't need to score.
He's got a worse goal scoring record than McFadzean, I believe, hasn't he?
Dominic Hyam scored 4 in the last calendar year against O'Hare's 2.
Yeah.
And, O'Hare, as I said, it's now he's scored 1 in 50 league games, which is over a season. So he's averaging less than 1 goal a season. And he's a number 10, an attacking number 10. And I honestly can't remember the last time I saw him shoot. So
anyway, Neil, you're 2 out, 1 position in.
Well, I quite like us as a team, so I'm not too scared about things. But I think probably he's going to send Jordan Shipley off to play some football. I think that's probably the right thing to do. And I agree on the number 10 situation. I just think that we need an option. You need options in different positions. And while I like O'Hare, sometimes he's not unlocking things, so you'll need something else. So I don't know who that looks like, but I just think we need somebody when I have a romantic idea of Jody Jones coming on and playing in that position sometimes just to see how he'd get on, but you just don't know where he is right now. I've got absolutely no sense of an idea of if Jody Jones is quite there, but he's getting in the squad every week, so you'd like to think he's got something about him still. Well, but yeah, those are my thoughts.
So I was saying this to Paul on the way down the other day. I think it was Luke Tisdale was being interviewed about Jones had played in is it called the Birmingham Senior Cup?
Yeah.
And that he'd offered his services to play in that game, and apparently he'd been warned that it was likely to be very, very physical, and that he said, it's fine, I'll get through it. And apparently he got kicked up and down the pitch, made one, scored one, was the undisputed man of the match, and that came out of it, and Luke Tisdale was saying, he got some real treatment, and he carried on. So it's tempting to draw a conclusion there that he isn't, physically away from the game. Do you know what I mean? What's it? That presumably it's deemed to be that his level of ability isn't there, or that it's because I can't understand why he didn't come on, because he was the obvious option, wasn't he? He was the one really creative player that you think, and I would love to see him, because like you say, I think the other thing was that I thought he deserved that huge crowd. I think it was a real opportunity to bring him on and for him to get a huge round of applause and to sort of get 10, 15 minutes at least to just try something. Because I fundamentally believe a little bit, we were joking about Jordan Shipley as well this week and saying, the one thing that Jordan Shipley is going to give you is he will give you goals and possibly assists, won't he? Even if you think, to your point about Tyler Walker, that he might not overall service the team as best as possible, you'd back him to score a goal every 5 or 6 games, wouldn't you? Yeah, because he can shoot from range and he's got a sort of instinct as a goal scorer. And likewise with Jones, in a game where you were struggling to sort of penetrate, he's all penetration. Whether he's the best player in the world is one thing, but like you said earlier, Paul, is he keeps getting on the bench, but with the reticence about ever bringing him on, and you kind of think, well, then why bother?
That's what confuses me. Like, I get if Robbins was just a little bit scared because it's been so long, he might think he's not quite at this level, but we've kept him on because he's still got a year on his contract, all that sort of stuff. But he's putting him on the bench. He's obviously got an eye towards it. He must be doing something in training. He must feel he's at a level where he's got something. But when it comes to the actual match, he's just looking beyond him, isn't he? Which is a shame, because I don't know which one of you guys mentioned the Fulham game, but that just to me felt perfect. Let's give him a bit more of a feel for the Championship, and let's ease him into the real pace of, and just get him some real confidence in front of the big crowds again, because they're probably the more important things than. He's a good player, isn't he? I mean, we've got to give him a little go to see what he's like.
And the problem is, the ultimate answer to that is we have no idea how good he is, and I think that's the biggest problem. It was always going to be the problem going into this season. Is you've got a player who, as someone pointed out, he was our best player 4 years ago. If you think about it realistically, the last sustained games he played was basically with the Duck. Back in 2017 in League One, League Two. We haven't seen him sustained since then, and that's why I would have loaned him out in the summer. I just think you're keeping him. I don't see why you're keeping him, because you either keep him when you play him or you don't keep him, because at the moment his career is basically treading water. We don't know if he's Championship good enough, because he's not getting the opportunity. And he's definitely not getting the opportunity in a position that he deserves to be given, because he's been brought on as a left wing back. He's not a left wing back. Or he could, let's say, in 10 years' time, have had an amazing career as a left wing back. I think we all think that's highly unlikely. So if you're going to retain him, you've got to give him incremental chances. And it is one of the problems with sort of throwing away your League Cup sort of run, is you don't get the chance to sort of bed these players in or give them the opportunity. But there was no harm in him coming on against Fulham. There was almost no harm in coming on against Derby. And the obvious answer to that question is, yes, we need a number 10. We need someone else. We need someone who's going to offer something different. Someone who's going to try 25 yards. I was thinking about this the other day, and what we actually need is Craig Hignett. If you remember before he broke his ankle, how good Craig Hignett was in that McAllister team. Basically, after he got injured, the whole thing collapsed. And we were playing quite a similar formation to what we're playing now, the way we're playing as well. Hignett was amazing for us for about 10 games and then got injured and was never the same player again. But it's that, as you say, it's that we've almost accepted that number 10 doesn't score goals, which is just bizarre, but we've accepted it because we all like O'Hare. So we've almost given O'Hare this massive license to be no goal threat at all. because we like the other attributes he brings. But also, if we had a number 10 who got us 10 goals a season but didn't run around like a blue-ass fly, I don't think anyone's going to complain. I think if we had a number 10 who offered us slightly different but almost was more creative, I don't think it would be a massive problem to us. I think we've almost got into the sort of ideological, we all love O'Hare, therefore we can't possibly play someone else because they're not going to do what O'Hare does. And it's like, I grant that's granted. Yeah, we're never going to have another player who does what O'Hare does because there aren't that many in the country who do what O'Hare does. But you do get number 10s who score goals and unlock the door, and that's not what he does. Maybe playing O'Hare deeper. Like, as the other thing I said, Joey message, and I don't think I would put this on the other group, is J Tab scored twice as many goals in virtually the same amount of games for Cov. He got 12 in 105. And he's like, well, you know, they're quite similar in a way, J Tab and Callum O'Hare, but J Tab scored twice as many, and he was never a number 10. He was a midfielder. I said it. I just find it odd that we've sort of got ourselves in a situation where we're allowing. It'd be like having a goalkeeper who's really, really good at crosses, but lets in one shot a game that he should save. No one would accept that, but it would also be mentioned. It's just anyway. We'll move on from that. I'm not asking the question about Bright because I don't want to. I'm also not asking the question about how many marshmallows can you fit in your mouth. Okay, that's a question about Jamie Allen. Or someone responding to Jamie Allen. Tom Furnival Adams has asked a question that's beyond our remit, so I'm not even going to ask that either. Ewan's asked, will Callum O'Hare ever score again? Patrick Andrews said, as we don't have any wingers, will Joey Jones go to a left back or a left wing back or number 10? We don't know that.
I think let's just assume that there are no more questions that we're going to answer.
No, there are some. Ken Wando said, exactly how worried about O'Hare egging your windows during Halloween and using Halloween as a smokescreen? I'm not worried at all. He wouldn't hit my house. He'd leave them on the drive. Callan Arctic Donkey I have one extremely important question. Do you all think Mark Robins has Hummel pajamas? And if so, do they have chevrons on the shoulders?
Well, definitely. I think every item of clothing he's wearing at the moment, anywhere to a wedding, it's a Hummel suit. I am on board with that. Yeah.
Yeah, free clothes. He's not giving up on free clothes.
All right. Jacko wants to know, what is Mark Robbins' favourite flavour of pot noodle? I can't answer this because I don't eat pot noodle, and I haven't for about 30 years. But I know Joey loves a pot noodle.
Well, I don't, actually. And I'm not going to answer it because I don't care.
Harsh but fair. Sorry, Jacko. Tell that with Joey next time you see him. I think we're virtually out of questions now. I'm going through them. The problem is it's lovely to see, but lots of people respond to other people's questions, so it's really hard to go through it. Martin Coleman asked, and I touched on this at the very start of the show. Serious question. To ensure we don't have issues like Saturday, should we reduce the away capacity to 3,000 to increase segregation and to try and stop knobheads from both sides getting involved? And unfortunately, I don't think there is anything you can do to stop people being knobheads.
No, and I also don't think you should throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is, we're talking. This is one of the first times I can remember in ages we're talking about this. Like, it's just they took a lot of fans. We had a lot of fans in there, and I think their arsehole dials have been turned up a little bit because they've been sat inside their houses and it's not an excuse. It's a shame, but I don't know. I think a lot of people behaved very poorly on Saturday, but let's not go mad.
Chris Coleman and me and Joey discussed this before the pod, so I'm sorry you're not going to hear our in-depth analysis of this. Simon Moore, better keeper than Kieran Westwood?
Seems weird to be able to judge him after 10 games against Kieran Westwood, greatest keeper of all time. So I don't think I can give a fair response to that. Give me 100 more games of Simon Moore. I'll go into it.
I think you already have given a very fair response there.
Dan Gage, not a question, but Alan's taxes 1-4 lost, 1 played 5.
Well,
I mean,
do it in
you're
the
not
voice.
doing anywhere near the justice to one of the best tweets I've seen in a very long time.
It's late and we've been doing this a long time.
And I don't think. And do you fully understand the context of that?
Yeah,
you do. Okay, good. Because I never think of you as. I don't know whether Alan's taxis went as far as Studley.
Leave me alone.
Somebody needs to sing it.
Oh,
I think it's got to be you, Neil.
Okay.
It also requires somebody to explain. I mean, it's not worth explaining. But either way, Dan Gage, world-class tweet. Well done.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I ruined it for you, everyone. Okay. Twigs has asked, if a tree falls down in the woods, is it Ben Sheaf's fault?
No.
Cool. Very quickly on Ben Sheaf. I don't mind Ben Sheaf. I find he has a very militant fan base where it's like if he does anything wrong and you say, oh, he's done something wrong, people get really grumpy about the fact you pointed out he's done something wrong. And I have given him man of the match at times. I thought he was really, really good in the second half against Fulham. So it is perfectly acceptable to think someone's okay overall, but has peaks where they're very good, but also makes classic clangers that's called a sheaf because they continually do it. And if he stopped doing it, he might even be a better player and worth defending.
Thing is, you get thrown in jail for criticising Ben Sheaf these days, don't you?
I also appreciate Joey's joke about teenage kicks sung in cod patois. So that was quite funny. I don't think that got the love it deserved either. I think we're basically... are we worried about someone's going to take Robbins off us?
No.
Yeah, we'll be
no,
right.
I didn't think so.
Jim Brown put that excellent thing up the other day that said if you look at the 92 teams as like one big 92 team league, then you look at the nationalities of the managers, is that Robbins is the 5th highest ranking English manager at the moment. I thought that
surprise me.
Say again.
It doesn't surprise me.
Well, so I think it says a little bit more about the paucity of quality English managers that there are, but that he still has to be up there, doesn't he? And I think that fair play to him. I just think the thing is, I wonder whether he couldn't be less sexy, could he?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like Scott Parker's nice hair is going to take him places, and he's sort of been there and done it. And I think I think the thing that's going to stop him from leaving us stop him from being taken is I think he would think twice about leaving again, because
especially now.
Well, if you're a manager, how are you going to turn down what has got to be about a safer job? Like, what would he have to do realistically? Because if we got relegated to League One again, I would say, well, I think we should persevere and keep him. Like, he'd have to take us down to League Two, realistically. He'd have to do, 5 consecutive bad seasons before he was gone, I think.
I think he's on that road to, it'll be in 2 years' time if we're still plateauing along in the Championship. I think that's, as you say, almost if we got relegated this season, then he's got a free pass to try and get us back up. I think his biggest concern will be the fact that we will just plateau and people will want to see the next step forward if we don't take it under him. But he's got at least 2 years. But I don't think there's a team in the Premier League who aren't going to take on an English manager who hasn't managed in the Premier League before.
But I also think that there's this thing of, the Stoke fans eventually got tired of Tony Pulis, didn't they? And then they just fell out of the division as soon as he was gone. And you just think, I know that people want to be taking steps forward all the time, but it's also okay to be punching your weight. And I think he's over punching at the minute. But if we were still in the Championship in a few years' time, I don't think I'd be like, oh god, this is rubbish.
No, I think the thing with Pulis is, again, all managers have a shelf life, don't they?
Yeah, and but I think they were like, no, we can get into Europe, and they were like, no,
No.
you can't.
But I think also there's only so many seasons you can watch Tony Pulis's football before you start losing your mind.
Well,
And I think
and then eventually you have to get Michael O'Neill in to do it again.
To basically do it the same thing, yeah. But Robbins is untouchable, but also I don't think there's many people looking at him going, he's the man to take this club forward, because I think, as I said, there's a revolving door of other managers who people look at, and he's done a great job. And I think, as you say, it's also some players, managers, and clubs work. He works at Cov, and as you say, basically got a job for life, or until he gets bored of it, or we get bored of him. It's
not really a job for life, then, is it?
Well, you know what I mean. It's as Joey said, it will take a long time before people get bored of him. But
he's talking about it in the life
not
sentence
sure who would try and poach him.
version of the word life. It's life, but not not your whole life.
Football life. Like, he's already done 4 years. I mean, that's life in football, isn't it? Especially at Cardiff. Normally we've gone through 6 managers. So that was the end of the questions. So thank you for all those who asked questions. Sorry for those that I bastardised or didn't get round to asking. Right,
this has been tremendous fun, but I think let's wrap things up, shall we? Is there anything that people are desperate to get off their chest?
Nah.
Beautiful. Right, okay. You have been very good for listening to us this long. Thank you very much to Paul.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you very much to Neil.
Thanks, boys.
And if you're listening, Marlon King, fuck you. Bye. Hello, you're listening to the Neil Lampton Show. My name is Joey, and this week I'm joined by what people are calling the classic lineup. That is Paul. Okay, well, he's not here, so it's just me and Neil.
The classic lineup.
Classic lineup, which is Paul, who isn't here, and Neil, who isn't here. It's just me recording it on my own this week. Right. I mean, I'm sort of filling for time here, hoping that Paul might come back in at some point. But
Paul!
Well, this is good. This looks like I've imagined that he was here. Like I finally fully lost the plot and okay. Right, maybe we start this again then.